All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. We have a very full agenda, so we'll go ahead and dive right in. Thank you all so much for joining today's discussion and for all of the celebration that you've all been doing around Colorado around World Refugee Day. My name is Victoria Francis. I am the State Advocacy Officer at the International Rescue Committee. Today for our overview of Colorado legislative achievements, I'll be joined by Matthew Mengesha, the policy advocate for the Spring Institute for Intercultural Learning. But first, we wanted to thank Colorado Refugee Connect for helping to host this conversation. Colorado Refugee Connect is a collaborative initiative designed to further integration across our state using strategies of learn, engage, and celebrate. They don't advocate for any specific legislation or policies, but they've really created this space where we can come together and talk about what's been happening at the local level here in Colorado and some of the policies that we've seen in the last year. So thank you so much to Colorado Refugee Connect for doing that. All of the opinions shared today are the opinions of the panelists, and we hope this is an opportunity for you to learn more and to shape your own opinions and perspectives on the policies and issues that we'll talk about today. But we'll go ahead and dive right in. This year was incredibly successful for our immigrant community and the organizations that advocate alongside them in the Colorado legislative session, which started in January and just concluded what seems like just a couple of days ago, but it's been about a week. So super excited to see that. You know, here in Colorado, immigrants make up about 10% of our population, and about 11% of Coloradans are native-born Americans who have at least one immigrant parent. So it's a significant portion of our community, and so it's been really exciting over this last year to see advancements made in supports, protections for our immigrant community, and really seeing Coloradans come together to celebrate and uplift our communities, and really recognizing that when we uplift immigrants in our community, it helps all of us to thrive and be successful as a state.
And not only this year did we have an incredible historic year legislatively, we also had two incredible legislators representing our communities. This year we saw a new wave of representation at the Capitol. We had two historic firsts and are excited to see more folks from our community step up into these decision maker roles. First, we have Representative Ricks. As a child, Representative Ricks fled a civil war in her native country of Liberia and sought asylum in the US before finding a path to citizenship under the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. She is the first African immigrant to serve in Colorado's General Assembly. Next, we have Representative Iman Joda. She is the first ever Muslim lawmaker in Colorado. She is the daughter of Palestinian immigrants and refugees, and she is a first-generation American.
So what we'll go ahead and do today is go over a handful of bills very quickly. We're incredibly grateful that we don't have enough time to go over all the amazing bills. I think that's really neat that there was so many good things going on that we don't have enough time today to talk in depth about all of them. So we'll go over a handful of bills really briefly, and then Matt and I will dig in deep on a couple of bills. But first, there was a data privacy bill, Senate Bill 21-131. And what this did is it made it so state agencies cannot disclose personally identifying information for the purpose of immigration enforcement unless it's required by law or a court-issued subpoena, warrant, or order. So it really provided some protections on the data that is shared with the State Department for our immigrant community. The second bill, Senate Bill 199, makes it so lawful presence will no longer be a requirement for some state and local public benefits where permitted under federal law. So really providing access to broader communities throughout Colorado to different benefits programs. And then thirdly is contraception access. This bill was pretty broad in that it provides contraception access to more contraception access to Coloradans in general, but it doesn't leave out individuals who don't have documentation. So it makes it so that these programs could be accessed by a larger group of our Colorado community, including immigrants.
Next, we have the Agricultural Workers' Rights Bill, which was SB 2187 and was actually just signed into law by the governor moments ago. This expanded the agricultural workers' rights regardless of immigration status, providing protections already extended to other workers, including minimum wage, overtime pay, meal and rest breaks, the right to organize, and the right to have visitors at employee housing, and access to overwork and health protections. The next was House Bill 1054, which was a housing access bill, which basically allowed for undocumented individuals to access state and local housing assistance. And then we have the License and Certification Access, which was Senate Bill 21-077. This made it where the state will no longer require immigration status as an eligibility for licenses, certifications, or registrations.
Next up was House Bill 1057. Currently in Colorado, it is a criminal offense to threaten to report another person's immigration status in order to steal money or valuables for them. This bill adds that it's a criminal offense to threaten to reveal someone's immigration status in order to make them do something or not do something. So this is especially significant in domestic violence cases. For example, if you have a partner who is abusing their partner who might be undocumented, they can't threaten that individual that if they report them to the police, they will expose their immigration status. That would become illegal. House Bill 21-1075 replaced the term illegal alien in Colorado statute and documents with the term workers without authorization. This is super exciting. The term illegal alien is used very historically very derogative way to talk about immigrant populations. So it's exciting to see this language and cultural shift around the way we talk about individuals without documentation. And then thirdly on this slide, we have Senate Bill 21-233, which created a study to look at what inclusion of undocumented workers would look like in the state's unemployment program.
So now we'll take a deeper dive into some more specific legislation that passed. The first being the Legal Defense Fund, which was House Bill 21-1194. In immigration and deportation hearings, individuals are not entitled to an attorney because they are civil cases, not criminal cases. So what this did was expand the availability of free legal services and representation to low-income individuals in immigration proceedings. It has a priority on those in immigration detention and individuals living in rural areas who are in deportation proceedings. The fund will be housed in the new Office of New Americans, and the grants will be given out to nonprofit organizations to provide these legal services.
Next up is the Office of New Americans, which Matt referenced. This is super exciting to see, in that it will give a home to many of the programs and kind of initiatives that you've seen kind of highlighted throughout this presentation. But the Office of New Americans will implement a statewide strategy and then coordinate state agencies to promote economic stability amongst immigrant populations, as well as their economic, social, linguistic, and cultural integration. It'll really serve as a central state agency where immigrant and refugee programs and policies and initiatives like the Legal Defense Fund can be housed when it makes sense to house them there. One question we hear a lot around this bill is how will that impact the Colorado Refugee Services Program, which is currently our state coordinating office for refugee resettlement. The Colorado Refugee Services Program is currently housed under the Colorado Department of Health and Human Services, and the Office of New Americans will be under the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. What they have decided to do is to come back together by the end of the year and discuss where the Colorado Refugee Services Program will live, what is the relationship it will have with the Office of New Americans, does it make sense at some point in the future to move the Refugee Services Program under the Office of New Americans, but wanting to be very intentional about that conversation, the discussions about how different departments and offices work together, and making sure it's the best fit for everyone. So stay tuned, you'll see continuous updates as this office continues to grow. But one really neat thing it will be able to do is provide technical support and guidance to relevant state agencies on meeting the needs of diverse immigrant populations. So as there's a department or an office who's maybe serving immigrants and has some questions about cultural competency or the nuance of working with these populations, they'll be able to use the Office of New Americans as a resource to make sure that they are adequately and properly serving our immigrant populations. It will also advance opportunities for public-private partnerships that serve our immigrant community. And maybe most importantly, it will gather input and feedback from Colorado's immigrant communities and be able to use that input and feedback to make recommendations and inform the governor, state legislators, and other state agencies. So really making sure that impacted communities and immigrant and refugee voices are centered in this work. Next up is U visa certifications. Just by way of background, you know, in case you don't spend a lot of time looking at different visa categories, U visas are they're non-immigrant visa for victims of crime and the family members who might have been impacted, for individuals who are helping law enforcement to either investigate or prosecute a crime. So if there's someone who is the victim of a crime and they work closely with law enforcement to help find the perpetrator, take that case to trial, those types of things, they might be eligible for U visa certification. But unfortunately, before this bill, what jurisdiction you were in, what city, county, really impacted your access to U visas and whether or not your U visa was certified by the law enforcement agency. People had different results, whether if they lived in, you know, Inglewood or Aurora or Evergreen, there just wasn't any kind of statewide requirements or standardization about what certification of a U visa looked like. So people's outcomes were really impacted by where they lived. So this bill mandates a time frame in which certification must be signed or declined by law enforcement. So there's expectations about when people will hear about their U visa. It aligns the factors that may be considered by law enforcement in certification decisions with the federal requirements, that someone was a victim of a crime or that they were helpful in investigating a crime. There's also an assumption of helpfulness, or a presumption of helpfulness. So assuming that someone was not helpful, law enforcement would default to assuming that someone was helpful in the process of an investigation. It also protects victims' personal information from being shared with ICE as they do work alongside law enforcement to solve things. And then, oh, sorry, the subtitles were over the last bullet point. Ensures that victims are provided with information about the U visa and kind of the process that they will be going through, and so that people are well informed about what this means for them.
The next bill was designed to increase voter engagement from the immigrant refugee communities. It's the multilingual ballot. It is House Bill 211011. It provides eligible voters with access to a statewide interpretation hotline that will provide over-the-phone translation in the same languages that the census is offered. So with this, it's important to remember they will not give you advice on how to vote or how to vote. They'll just simply translate the ballots for folks. For counties where there are at least 2,000 citizens over the age of 18 or 2.5% of their citizens that speak another language at home, the county must provide voters with the ability to vote with a translated ballot at a voter service and polling center by 2022. So keep your eyes out for this.
Emergency supplies. This was exciting to see. As I'm sure most of you know, there's never enough supplies for people to go around. This bill provides funding to nonprofit organizations across the state, including diaper banks and family resources centers, to allow these organizations to distribute diapers to families in their community. So really exciting to see.
And lastly, we have the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit, which were in two bills, House Bill 211311 and House Bill 211312. What these bills did, they modernized Colorado's tax code by closing loopholes for big corporations and the wealthy, and in turn provide more opportunities for lower income folks and small businesses. This also increased the percentage of the state earned tax credit to 20% of the federal credit. So not only will you receive EITC from the federal government, but you will also receive one from the state. Changes to the eligibility of EITC also include workers aged 18 and over, where previously it was in your mid-20s. And then lastly, it fully funded the state child tax credit and makes it available for all Coloradans, including those filing with an ITIN number. This has been a program that's been in Colorado for a number of years, but it's never been funded. So this year we finally got some funding in there, and hopefully we can provide some support for a lot of families across Colorado.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you for everyone. I know it's a lot of information, but really some amazing, exciting policies that were passed this year that really support the communities that we care about. But with that, we'll go ahead and turn over to today's National Opportunities panel conversation, where the discussion will focus on special immigrant visa, the Special Immigrant Visa program, and how it relates to Afghanistan and the upcoming withdrawal of U.S. troops from that country. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the incredible panelists who will be discussing this timely and important issue. Facilitating today's conversation is Chris Purdy, Project Manager of Veterans for American Ideals, or VFAI, at Human Rights First. He worked on the VFAI project first as a volunteer and then on staff since 2016. In his time as a volunteer, Chris worked hard to build veteran community relationships across the Southeast from his home in Atlanta. Chris served 8 years with the U.S. Army National Guard, where he deployed to Afghanistan and Thailand. Sohaila Faryar, did I get it right? I was practicing, sorry about that. Sohaila has worked in various capacities for the UNHCR in Baghdad, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, the Afghanistan Parliamentary Assistance Program, and in technical assistance in gender equality, human rights, and rule of law to the government of Afghanistan. She holds an International Refugee Law Certificate from International Association of Professionals in Humanitarian Assistance and Protection, and is passionate about assisting refugees to integrate into their new home. Mohammed Mustafa Azim is from Kabul, Afghanistan, where he attended medical school and worked for the International Committee of the Red Cross, UN World Food Program, USAID, the British Council in Afghanistan, and more. He moved to the US in 2014 through the Special Immigrant Visa program, where he worked for the International Rescue Committee in Denver. He is now working as a COVID-19 case investigator for the Institute of Public Health Innovation in Fairfax County Health Department in Virginia. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to our amazing panelists.
Thanks, Victoria. And hello, everybody. Again, my name is Chris Purdy. I am at Human Rights First, and I couldn't have asked for a better day to talk about the Special Immigrant Visa program. You know, the state of Colorado has a wonderful advocate in Congressman Crow for the SIV program. Yesterday we received some amazing news that we had been hoping for a long time. And that is that the Biden administration is planning on evacuating the folks who are in the SIV pipeline out of Afghanistan during the withdrawal and to another location to safety while they can wait for their SIV program. We're very encouraged by that. There's a lot of questions we still have about the administration's plan, where, how many, when, and we'll get to that a little bit later today, but this is very timely. And so I just wanted to say thank you to the organizers of this event. I know you didn't schedule the timing, but we're all very, very grateful to be speaking out on this very critical issue right now. And I guess I could talk a little bit about what the SIV program is. This is the Special Immigrant Visa Program, also known colloquially as SIV, is a process that was created about 13 years ago by Congress as a way to recognize those individuals who served alongside American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iraq and Afghanistan both had two separate SIV programs, both signed into law separately via statute. And so they operate fundamentally differently. So there are some quirks in the Afghan SIV process that weren't there in the Iraqi program and vice versa. But what I will say is the goal is as military members carry their mission out in Afghanistan, they recognized that they needed the support of local individuals to help ensure mission success. These people were the interpreters, the translators, but also they were cooks and engineers and plumbers. They were clerks at embassy buildings. They did all the things that we needed to be successful in our mission overseas. And for that, they were rewarded by the Taliban with a death sentence. These are people who constantly became under threat by the enemy. And as a result, we needed to create a way to get them out. So over the years, this program has evolved to where if one serves for the U.S. government for about 2 years, that person is then eligible for this process. Now, the original goal of this was to get that visa processed and signed and in someone's hands so they could be in the United States within 9 months of applying. Those of you who work in the U.S. government know that that is a rapid pace for anything. And over the years, this has been a political football in Congress because it has to be reauthorized. New visas have to be issued. And as a result, there have been numerous onerous limitations or onerous requirements that have been put on this program that have made it very difficult and very long for someone to get their visa. We estimate the average wait time for someone from start to finish is about 4 years. That's on top of the 2 years that one needs to even apply. So, you know, you're seeing situations where people are waiting, 5, 6, 7 years from the beginning of their service to the U.S. government until the moment when we can effectively honor the promise that we made to them at the beginning. Which is why it's critically important as we leave Afghanistan now and as we see Taliban gains throughout the country that we take unprecedented action to meet the need and to really expedite this process. People do not have time to wait 4 years to get their visas processed. We just don't have the view that the Afghan government will be able to provide them with the security that they're needed in the remaining few months and years. So that's why we're just so grateful to see, again, the Biden administration's actions yesterday committing to an evacuation. I really want to say again, thank you to Congressman Crow for his leadership. We at Human Rights First were approached by the congressman after the withdrawal announcement was given in April. And he came to us and he said, what can we do? You know, what fixes can we have to the program? What other extraordinary measures can we have? And we told him, sir, you know, we appreciate your interest in this process, but we just do not believe that visa fixes are the way to go. Those different bureaucracy laden layers of the process that I mentioned earlier. There is a time when Congress can go back in and fix it, but we needed a champion who was going to say, you know, I'm going to cut through that and I'm going to demand that the Biden administration do more. And he was the first person to call for a Guam evacuation. And that's what we're calling for. We're calling for the Biden administration to take these evacuees to Guam. Now, why Guam? I could talk a little bit about that at length, but I'll just say briefly that Guam offers a lot of protection immigration opportunities for those who might struggle with the SIV process. They can go there, they can stay safely on the island, go through the SIV process, and if there's an issue with their visa, they can always apply for asylum. Guam also has the benefit of having historically been the place for these evacuations. They have done this in 1975, 1999, and it's been a place that we can have in the Pacific that we know that the people there are ready and willing to help refugees throughout our nation's history. And in fact, the Guamanian people have stood up in the past few months and said, yeah, we're ready to do it. The Guamanian legislature just the other day started talking about ways that they can have official legislation and resolutions in support of this. So Congressman Crow was very supportive of that, and we're grateful to have his continued support through. And we know that he is going to help us get this across the finish line. So with that, I believe we have a message from the congressman, and I will kick it over to someone from the team to play that, and then we'll get into a conversation to see just who are the people that are affected by this program. And I'm really excited to hear their perspectives.
Thank you, Colorado Refugee Services Program, for hosting today's event. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about something that's incredibly important to me right now and I've been working on in Congress. As an Army Ranger and a paratrooper, I served both in Iraq and Afghanistan and worked very closely with local Iraqi and Afghan interpreters, contractors, and many others without whom I would not be here today, and without whom we could not have accomplished our mission and done our work. Their service was often provided at great risk to themselves and their families, and many Afghans died in service to this country. But they all served with courage and with the understanding that the U.S. would stand by them and provide safe haven when and if necessary. That time is now. As we approach the deadline to withdraw from Afghanistan, our Afghan partners and their families are under increased threat by the Taliban. We have a moral and national security imperative to honor our promises and protect our partners. So I'm working hard in Congress alongside my colleagues in the Honoring Our Promises Working Group on legislative efforts to expedite the SIV application process and protect our Afghan partners. This includes legislation to temporarily waive the medical examination requirement for applicants, which is cost prohibitive and difficult for many applicants to safely receive, an idea that came in part from a roundtable conversation that I had with local SIV recipients in Colorado. So thank you for your partnership, and let's work together, get this done, because I believe if we do work together, we can save a lot of lives. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again to Congressman Crow for those report remarks. I know his staff and his team are really dedicated to this. So with that, we're going to introduce our other two panelists here who are going to discuss why this SIV visa is so important to them personally, because these are people who have gone through this process. So Mustafa and Suhaila, I'd love for you all to take some time right now, a couple minutes, and just introduce yourself and tell us your story. And if you could explain, why the SIV program was so important to you, and how was it that you're actually able to access the program? And so I'll kick it over to Mustafa first.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as you said, this is a very important program, especially for the people who are working for the U.S. government, either as a direct employee or as a contractor. And this program gives them a peace of mind that in case if it's needed, United States is there to protect them and their families. I actually started applying for this program back in 2012. It was almost the last year of my assignment with the USAID and US Embassy. Actually, I didn't have that idea to apply for the SIV program because I was still optimistic that finally we would achieve all the goals that the United States and the Afghan government had at the early 2000s. So one day there was a huge explosion during a mission that we were going. And my boss was, we were working both for USAID. And then he gives me the idea to apply for this program. He was not pessimistic, but he said that, if something happens, then you will have a peace of mind and your kids can grow and live in a peaceful environment in the United States. So this is how I applied for the SIV program at the early 2012, and it took me almost 2 years. I was lucky because I was working there for the US Embassy and they knew everything for me, so I didn't go through such a long process for the other people that they are going or they have gone, since they already know me and my background was clear for them. But it still took me like almost more than 2 years to be approved and get the visa and come here. So I will let Suhaila share her stories. Thank you.
Go ahead, Suhaila. Love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk about SIV and the importance of this process as a program, and also share our stories kind of to advocate for other people who are waiting and to save their lives. As you know, my name is Suhaila Faryar, and I worked at the very last job I had with Afghanistan Parliamentary Program Assistant, which our main goal was to provide technical assistance to the government of Afghanistan, especially National Assembly. And I was working as a legal advisor to the Women Affairs Human Rights Commission at the National Assembly of Afghanistan. And that time we were working on the elimination violence against law. That was the most complicated law in Afghanistan that we worked for almost 4 years to pass this law and also implement that law. But we had a lot of people who were opposing this law, and I was a member of a group, a working group, that we were trying to explain the importance of this law in Afghanistan. This was the reason that I got a numerous threat from different groups, especially the conservative group who were thinking that this law is a Western law, and we are the people, or we are a group of women that trying to bring Western culture in Afghanistan. I applied for this SIV based on the criteria that I was eligible to apply for this visa, but it took me 4 years. Even I was under threat, and I quit my job. I changed my address, and I received calls and also email from different people that I'm a spy. And once I was kicked out from the official meeting at the National Assembly that I was attended, and that they called me directly that I'm spying for a foreigner government. That's why I have to leave National Assembly. And this is what happened to me, but I waited for 4 years for this visa to process. And the process of this visa, as you know, it says only 4 or 5 steps, but it is taking for some people, it takes from 2 to 10 years. I know one of my coworkers that for him, it took 10 years to his visa, until his visa was issued.
Thanks. That's really, it's horrible to hear that it's taking that long for America's promises to be honored. So I appreciate you all, being willing to speak out and sharing your stories. And I would just encourage folks, if you have questions, there will be a question and answer at the end of this, but if you wanted to park something in the Q&A function on your Zoom call, we'd love to be able to answer those as we get to the end. And so Suhaila, if I could just go back to you and talk a little bit more about the actual SIV status. What does that mean? What kind of documents are conferred? What does that mean for your immigration status? As opposed, is it a refugee? Is it asylum? What does that mean?
The process for this for SIV, the first criteria, the person who has to work on behalf of U.S. government or must be as a contractor to work, and they must have a HR letter or a COM approval from the supervisor. U.S. citizen supervisor must approve that this person work at least. At the beginning, it was 1 year, but recently they changed for two years of service with the U.S. on behalf of U.S. government or U.S. projects. And once the person or SIV applicant have those documents, they can apply for SIV. And for me, this is kind of based on the process that they have. When they granted, the SIV visa is granted, it means that is a kind of temporary green card. The visa that I got, it was a temporary green card because once I moved to USA, after 14 days or it was 15 days, I received my green card. It is like a permanent residency, the visa that we are getting.
I am muted. Sorry, I should know how to do this by now. And so that means it's different than it is not a refugee program. It's not part of the asylum system. This is an expedited path to a green card.
Yes, absolutely. It's not an asylee. It's not a regular refugee program that they goes to different states. It has different states like security clearance. It has like administration process. It goes for interview, and every applicant has to pass the medical examination. Security clearance is the long process that everybody it's not a non-exempt process. But this is different from asylee. This is different from normal refugee process.
And could either one of you just talk a little bit more about that process? And I know there are a lot of concerns in the modern body politic about security. We were always concerned, especially in the previous administration, about migrants coming to this country and there being security. Can you just explain a little bit more about the security steps and maybe touch briefly, and this is not really related, but touch briefly on what chief of mission means, because I think that's something that is going to be getting some news in the next couple of days.
Thank you. Yeah, the process, when I started, I can, because since I went through all the process, I can give a good example that how I started. If you go to the website SIV, like SIV applicant, you can say that there is a COM approval or apply for SIV, have your HR letter, COM approval, then petition, file a petition, then administration process, then interview or visa, and then you're in the USA. It looks very simple, but once you start, if you file or submit your application, you will see that it's a long process. Every step has different different time amount to get approval for. COM approval, when you have your HR letter, and also you have your statement, personal statement, and also recommendation letter from one of the American supervisors that approved that you work with this organization and you are under a threat. And then you can file, the person can file for a COM approval. COM approval is also, this takes from a year to different from every individual, that how long it will take that they get their COM approval. After the COM approval, that's another process that start, that's the file petition. Petition is that with the the person can apply for the family member, immediate family member, for husband, spouse and children. And then it's also another process that takes from 6 months to 1 year or 3 months, different for every individual. And once the person got the petition, then the other process is starting the administration, which is the interview, visa interview. Visa interview, everybody has to submit their civil document, which is all the documents that support their visa application. This is also another process. It takes from 6 months to 1 year for every individual to complete this process. And then once the person starts the administration process, the security clearance is starting that time. And the next one is interview. To be called for interview is also another long process. Some people waiting for their interview 1 year to 2 or less than that. Or even some people take for them longer for that process, for the interview. And after the interview, the medical issue, the medical examination, and then the security clearances start. And some people after the interview, they are waiting for starting from 1 year to 2 years, and also some people takes up to 10 years to get their visa because of security clearance. And for security clearance, everybody has to submit any social activities, cell phone, contact up to 10 years, their address up to 10 years, their family member name, their family member telephone number, contact information, social media activities, any type of activities that they are involved socially or individually with any type of group or magazine or whatever they are involved. And this is what it takes. It's not something that SIV, if we file a application, the next day they will grant us a visa. It's a long process. To be honest, some people, they will lose their hope once they apply because there is no standard fixed processing time for each SIV stage. SIV applicant travel from most of the provinces. Everybody doesn't live in Kabul. They travel from provinces, and they don't have there is no timeline for how long it will take. Security clearance is the longest process for every SIV individual. And the last one, then after if they get approval for all these steps, then the last one is even, I want to share this one, that we get an email. I received an email from US Embassy that your visa is issued, but don't make any changes to your life changes. Don't resign from your work. Don't sell your properties because until you don't have your visa. And once I got my visa, Ivan told me that don't call. I think it was in Chicago, he told me that don't call your friend. Don't say that you're in US because we don't know yet. You have to pass the security. This is all the things we have been through that. I personally experienced this, that this is something that it's not easy that we get this visa. This visa has a long process, and some people were killed while they were waiting for their SIV visa.
Yeah, it is really Byzantine and long, and it really illustrates the point why we need to make this faster and get these folks out now. So, and if I could go over to Mustafa, given all of that, Suhaila said that some people go through this process and they lose hope. Why would Afghans support the U.S. military if this was the reward, this long process, and maybe they'll get a visa, maybe they don't? Why did you support the U.S. military, and what did that choice mean to you personally?
Yeah, thank you. As I said earlier, it was not my idea to apply for the SIV program, although I knew that something was going on. So personally, since I was born in Afghanistan, I would never thought US as an ideal place for me to live there. But as I said, that incident happened, and then we were in Kapisa, north of Kabul, and we were ambushed and attacked by the Taliban. Me and my boss, we were the representatives of the USAID and 3 northern provinces of Afghanistan and north of Kabul. So once we went to the French base, and at dinner, my boss encouraged me to apply for this. So many people like me, they never had this idea to apply for this IB program. So this is why they were gonna join as a contractor or as a direct employee for the US government. So from that time till latest 2014 or 15, everyone had the hope that the US intervention is for the good cause for the Afghanistan. So like me, many people thought the US intervention in Afghanistan like the way they did in South Korea. They made a war-torn country to one of the top 10, best economies in the world. This is what everybody was hoping. This is what everybody was expecting. This is why everybody was trying to join the US government or the US Army as a contractor, as an interpreter, or as whatever they could in order to help them. Including me, many people never saw the US as invaders. Like sometimes I hear that they say that the US invasion of Afghanistan. I never thought for a second that it was the invasion by its real mean. If it was a real invasion, I would never support the US in Afghanistan. So if I got your question correctly, so it was not just the purpose of SIV that the people joined. So they joined the US, either the US Army or the US contractors, in order to help the US, to help the Afghans to build their war-torn country from year 2000 till now.
Thank you. If I could just expand a little bit on that, you talked a bit about you're not seeing this as an invasion, that there was real hope that the U.S. could come in and turn the economy around, turn the infrastructure around. I think I found that the comparison of Korea to be very apt and a very interesting perspective. And so can you just share then? I mean, this might be an obvious question, might be, might be too simple for me to ask, but why were, these individuals who are applying for the SIV program, and yourselves included, why were they at risk? Why did the Taliban and the insurgents view them with such hatred? And if the hope was there to make this country, make Afghanistan a better place, and you were contributing to that, why were you so at risk?
So yeah, the Taliban are calling those people who are working not only with the US government, but even with the Afghan government as the eyes and ears for the invaders or for the crossades, because they're a group that they never want the Afghanistan, to prosper. They never want educated people to be in power, and they have their own rights to say something. So they want to control everything. So this is why, especially after 2014, when the US started discussion about withdrawing forces, and especially after Trump took over, he had some words in which he praised the Taliban for being good fighters and things like that. And the US intervention in Afghanistan was a waste of money, waste of time, things like that. And then with all agreements the US government had with the Taliban last year, it gives them a good morale to start, their barbaric and tyrannical incursions and invasions of the rest of the country. And these people who worked with the US government, they are the first targets, because they are the people that they always say that we never forget. This is what the Taliban always say. And they have proved that they never forget, even if it takes them for 20 years. One day, if they can do it, they will come and take their revenge. So they're considering us, and the people who are there right now, they're waiting for their visas. They are actually the eyes and the ears for the invaders, the way they say that. So for a Talib, it's very easy for them to come and talk with you, being, as a, US-born American, or with the Americans. You can see that they have very good and peaceful conversations, negotiations, with Khalilzad and the rest of the US mission in Qatar, but they have never met the Afghan representatives, because they say that those people who are Afghans and they are in Afghanistan, they are the main people to blame for whatever happens in Afghanistan after year 2000. So just simply saying that their real enemies are the people who worked with the US government and who helped the US government in their missions, not the US government and their people alone.
Interesting. Sahalia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, as Mustafa said, because why we were in danger, because we supported US military and US government aid projects. And those who worked in different, like either in military or non-military project, they are their life are in danger. And some of them already lost their life because Taliban are against presence of US and other foreigners in Afghanistan, and they doesn't want them to be in Afghanistan. That's why they kill innocent people. Doesn't matter if they are Afghan or foreigners. Therefore, those who work with US military, with British military or Australian military, they're all in risk.
Interesting. So my last question on the SIV program, the SIV experience in general is, and this is for, I think, both of you, so feel free to answer as you see fit, but what has accessing the SIV program and resettling in the US meant to you and your family? Have there been some supports or different things that you wish you would have had in the process and coming to the US? And just generally, what has this meant to you as you made the transition from Afghanistan to the US and started your life here? And I'll let either one of you take that.
So For me, yeah, it was very challenging. Even I remember that the day when I was doing my visa interview, the counselor or the person who was doing my interview, her first question was how I was going to survive in the United States after I reached there. So I told her that I would do something. Don't worry about that. Just give me my visa. So, but by the time when I arrived in the United States with 2 kids and my wife, yeah, I faced lots of challenges at the beginning because the type of work that I was working in Afghanistan, it was not available for me. And I'm sure that it is the same for lots of people. And then, moving from place to place and, from houses to houses, finding jobs, applying for different, programs and things like that. Everything was very, very challenging. So I believe that if for a couple of months, besides the financial aid that they receive from the resettlement agencies, if there is a way for the government to create like a fund for those people, for the SIVs, to help them for a couple of months, because I'm sure that they will find their way. The way we survived in Afghanistan, the situation here in the United States is not comparable, and it's not that bad as in Afghanistan. But many people, they need a couple of months till they get their driving license, and they know where the things are, where to go, and where apply for jobs. And then as the time goes, everybody can adjust, and even they can live better than other people who were born here. So, but just to summarize this, when we arrive here, or when SIVs arrive here, finance is a very important thing for them. So this will give them a big peace of mind and will make them ready to face more challenges in the future.
Thank you. Switching gears again a little bit to the current situation in Afghanistan. Mustafa, you talked a lot about what you saw over the past 20 years and your experience there. Sohaila, I'd like to ask you, what can you say more about the current situation and for at-risk individuals? How many people are at risk for retaliation or harm and other after the U.S. military departs? And I understand you have some pretty recent anecdotes and experiences on this, and so I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share that.
Yes, the recent incident that happened to one of my friends, that her husband was one of the SIV applicants, and he was supporting U.S. military in Lashkargah in Helmand province, and he was killed when he was traveling from Helmand to Kabul in 2011. And while he was waiting for SIV visa. And last week, it was 2 weeks ago, there was a bomb blast in Kabul, east of Kabul, Dashtabarchi, and his wife and 1 kid was killed. The kid was seriously injured, and the wife was killed during that bomb blast. And Taliban took the responsibility of that bomb blast in east of Kabul. And this is what happened. Like, this is one of the real story that happened to my friend, and I lost her, and she lost her husband because he was supporting U.S. military. And there are many cases that happen in Afghanistan and happening every day, and nobody has the report for that one. And even the news, or they are not covering, or the family doesn't have access to like U.S. Embassy or any news agency to report those incidents. And if U.S. military withdraw from Afghanistan, once they complete the process, I'm sure that many people will lose their, they will be killed by Taliban. And also there was a news that Taliban said that those who work with foreigners, if they write like a regret later or something that to them that they regret what they did, or if they say that accept their mistake that they worked or support U.S. military, they will forgive them and they can live in Afghanistan peacefully. This is a kind of trap for them. This is the way that they want to identify the people who work with the U.S. military. If for some people, they don't have any other idea. If they want to stay in Afghanistan, if they say that, yes, I worked with U.S. military, then that's a direct threat for them.
Yeah, that announcement, I think last month by the Taliban, that they were willing to forgive people who were just trying to build their own country, just trying to do the right thing. I think really a lot of us don't hold a lot of faith in that, and so we're really anxious about making sure that we can do all that we can. And so I'm just wondering, Mustafa, then, what are you hearing from your friends and family on the situation on your ground, and how are folks feeling about the impending U.S. departure? I know that there had been some reports of northern cities, for example, suburbs being overrun by the Taliban making inroads into urban areas. That must be very scary for people who have held out in the cities as a hope of this is a stable environment. And so, Mustafa, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what your friends and family are feeling about this time.
Yeah, right now the situation is very bad, especially in the last 2 to 3 months. So the Taliban have started their barbaric invasion of wherever they can go and reach. So we have like a famous saying from the time when Genghis Khan attacked Afghanistan and went through all the way to Iran. So someone has another person, after the Mongolian army left Herat, they destroyed the whole city. And they asked him, like, what happened? Then he said in Farsi, he said that Amadan o Kandan o Sohtandan o Raftan, which means that they came, destroyed, killed, and looted, and they left. So this is what the Taliban are doing right now. Specifically the same thing. They come and they attack, places, for example, a district, they capture it, and then they make very good videos. You can see the schools, the government centers, the public places. They burn them, they explode them. You can see, they can, easily, I don't know how the social medias allow them. These are all terroristic actions. I'm sure that's why I've seen the government building in Farah province, in which they destroyed and they exploded the whole, government center. So this is what they are doing right now. They are coming and attacking, and the Afghan army is not capable of defending anymore. So now the civilians in northern provinces and also in north of Kabul, the civilians have started, harming themselves. They say that they are going to defend and they are going to fight the Taliban to the end. And they would not allow the Taliban to take over after the US military leaves. This is a good news that the people are defending themselves, but at the same time, this is a bad news that the Afghan government will not be able to control, all armed groups. They have proven that. So all armed groups will have their own governments, their own administration, wherever they control. And so in a situation like this, the SIVs face a big threat, not only from the Taliban, but also from semi-independent armed groups who are fighting against the Taliban. So overall, this is not I'm not receiving a good picture from Afghanistan. So my father passed away last October because of COVID-19, and in that time I couldn't travel back. But right now I was planning to go there for 10 or 15 days just to go and see my mother because I wasn't able to go there. And last night I was talking to my brother. He is the deputy of Ariana Afghan Airlines. So right now he is in Qatar. So I told him that, hey, I'm planning to come to Afghanistan in August, just for a week or 10 days. And he looked like I was crazy, with open mouth. And he told me, are you crazy? What are you doing here? Why are you coming here in the middle of, COVID-19 crisis and, what is happening in Afghanistan? Why are you coming? I said, just I'm missing you guys. I haven't seen you for 7 years, and I have to, I want to come and, see my mother and, spend some time with her. Then he said, okay, if you want to come, that's fine, but I'm going to lock you in the house and I won't let you go out. I will take you from the airport just to stay there for a week or 10 days, never a step out of the house. I don't want you to be killed. Situation is not good, and go back. Otherwise, if you listen to me, please don't come. This is not the good time for you. Overall, we are not receiving good messages. I was talking to one of my friends. He is also an SIV applicant, and now he lives in Turkey. Actually, he escaped to Turkey because he's still waiting for the COM approval. So I asked him how we were talking, and I asked him how he was feeling. He used an Afghan proverb. So if I translate it literally in English, he said that the sky of the God is too far. I cannot reach to the sky. And the ground that I'm walking on is very rigid. It's very difficult for me to walk. So which describes, a situation that you don't know what to do. So many SIVs are in a situation like this who are waiting for their COM approvals, and they don't know whether to stay here, whether to go outside. No place is accepting them. Even if they go to Europe, they don't have a chance to be accepted there. So it's a time of uncertainty, unfortunately.
Thank you for that, Mustafa. So Hala, I'd like to end this part of the discussion. Last question for you, perhaps. What legislative, given all that's happening, right? We've talked a little bit about the evacuation, and I expressed the Guam option, but what legislative and executive efforts are underway to create the support needed for the Afghan people, the Afghan government, the SIVs, as our military departs, and what will it take to get this done?
I know that everybody is concerned about the many innocent lives. And if we can, if there is any way that shorten the process, because this process, and now the SIV applicant, they don't know that, they don't know the time amount, how long it will take to process their application. If there is any way that they can because the time is a lengthy process. If they can bring or change the process to, I absolutely support the security clearance, but not to wait for a COM approval for 1 year. This is something that they can do it in a month or a week. If they change every process, petition, it take maybe to accept or reject it. It can be can be done by maybe a month or a week or two weeks or 2 months, instead of waiting for 1 year or 2 years. Visa interview or medical. For medical, some people, and also the expenses for medical. Some people, they are traveling from poor provinces and they cannot afford to pay $2,000 or $3,000 based on the family size to pay for their medical expenses. And for the visa waiting, once they are done with all the process, if they, after the visa interview, if they can hire temporary a staff member, if they don't have enough staff member to process at the consulate section, to process the visa, instead of waiting for 2 years, if they can bring it to 1 year, minimum 1 year or 2 or a year or 5 months or 6 months, or also if they can give a timeline for the person, if they don't know they're waiting and their life is in danger. Even with the evacuation, I have a question that once they move to different country, if their visa is not processed, because I know some people, they were not passed and their visa was rejected after interview or after administration process, what will happen to them? Is there any alternative, option for them once they get rejection after visa interview? And I just want from legislators, if they can closely see and ask for people who have gone through this process, and to take in take a suggestion or just research and bring a policy or a procedure that's really helpful for this SIV applicant.
Thank you. And just one last follow-up question to that. You brought up, you both have used this term COM, Chief of Mission approval. What does Chief of Mission mean? And why is it so important? Just real briefly in the last minute or so.
Chief of Mission, as per my experience, so when I received the COM approval or Chief of Mission approval, it was the signature of General Eikenberry, who was the U.S. ambassador in Afghanistan at that time, if I'm not mistaken. So as per my personal experience, when I received my Chief of Mission approval, which was like a letter which was emailed to me, I saw the ambassador's signature on it. So I don't know what Faila thinks about it.
Chief of Mission or COM approval, it's a group of, it's in U.S. Embassy, the U.S. ambassador, and also has a committee that this committee is working on once a person or Afghan apply for SIV, they have to submit their application, like a statement, personal statement, and also recommendation letter from U.S. supervisor. They are sending to U.S. Embassy in Kabul. U.S. Embassy in Kabul has a committee that chaired by U.S. ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador, and they are the one that will review the application and will see that who is eligible or if they pass the requirement. The requirement is that they have to have a HR letter, they have their ID, they have to have like a recommendation letter from U.S. A supervisor and a personal statement. And also they have to have a serious ongoing threat. Based on those requirements, then Chief of Mission or this group, like a committee, will make a decision that yes, this person is eligible to apply for SIV. This is the first beginning or the initial step to apply for SIV. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, but it is also, as you mentioned, not the full amount of people who would be qualified, who would be eligible just by virtue of their background, their paperwork and whatnot. But it is a line in the process. So thank you for that. I am going to turn this over now to Matt and Victoria and talk about a little bit some engagement opportunities for activism locally and nationally regarding the SIV program. And as they're getting their videos on and preparing, I just want to remind everybody that there is an opportunity for you all to ask questions. You can type in the Q&A function in the Zoom box, or you can also type it directly into the chat in case you're unable to find the Q&A function. So with that, I'll kick it over to Matt and Victoria.
Thanks, Chris. Great conversation. Really exciting to be here today to hear everyone. With issues like this, it's always important to reach out to your member of Congress, both your congressional representative as well as the 2 senators in Colorado, and let them know that you care about this issue. The SIV issue and what's going on right now is a little kind of wonky because there's not one necessarily bill that's going through Congress, or we're just saying please do something as soon as possible, and things are evolving. But just any outreach to your members of Congress to let them know that you do care about this issue. It's important that we take care of our wartime allies and that we provide protection for the individuals who served alongside us. So anything you can do to make those connections. As far as local advocacy, please continue to connect with the nonprofits that you're hopefully already connected to stay up to date on what's going on. I think we all just took a collective huge breath that the legislative session is over, spending the summer thinking about what's happening for 2022. And so really excited to see this momentum carried forward and see what happens next year. And we hope you'll all join us at the Capitol, hopefully more in person next year, to continue to advocate for the communities that we care so much about. Matt, did you have anything to add?
No, I think just keep a lookout as well for the Office of New Americans, because there will be a lot of opportunities for engagement through there.
Yeah. But with that, we would love to open it up to any questions you might have as audience members. Feel free to unmute yourself or go ahead and put questions into the questions and answer function. So we do have one question. It says, if I understand correctly, as the U.S. withdraws from Afghanistan, all SIVs currently in the process will be evacuated to Guam.
So I can touch on this if that's all right, Victoria. And I'm actually dropping in our website, evacuateourallies.org, that would explain our proposal to the Biden administration. And this is our proposal as advocates and members of Congress have signed on to this as well. The proposal is that they go to Guam, they do initial checks there in Guam, get COVID vaccine shots, and then move from Guam onto locations throughout the United States, following the same path that the Vietnamese evacuees in 1975 did. There will be some element that would probably remain on Guam, who could fill in some of the 8,000 empty hotel rooms that are there. But this is just something that we are proposing, and we are waiting to hear from the Biden administration. We were hoping to hear after the meeting today with President Biden and the Afghan delegation on what the plan is, because President Biden yesterday said he would tell us today. There are some talk about a third country, other American territories that are not subject to the same immigration laws as Guam. And we are not, we are holding up Guam as the gold standard for some of the reasons that our Sohalia said at the very end there. What happens to people who go through the process and they don't get chief of mission and they fail for no fault of their own? Well, the reason for that is they need to be on U.S. territory so they can access the asylum system. And asylum is really that backstop for those individuals. So we're still trying to figure out what the Biden administration has to do. But really right now, we are switching gears quite quickly from an all hands on deck push to get the evacuation going to now an all hands on deck push to say, hey, this is the place you have to be. So everybody has to be included, all 18,000 people in the SIV process, and they'll have to go to Guam from our perspective.
Thanks, Chris. And just a follow-up question to that, and something that Mustafa had touched on previously, when individuals are denied their visa or they end up traveling into Europe, are there any other allies who are in Afghanistan who have similar programs to the U.S. SIV program?
Yes. Oh, is that for me or is that for everybody? Sorry.
Sorry, that was for you.
Okay, got it. I thought I heard someone come off mute. No, yeah. Basically, every NATO country has a program that every NATO country that employed interpreters, put it that way, or local nationals has a program to evacuate or to rapidly process visas for their individuals. The British, for example, their visa processing, they're processing visas for people who worked for 1 day with the British government. So if you worked for 1 day for the Queen, you've got a home waiting for you somewhere in the north of England somewhere, I'm sure. The Australians also have a process to rapidly evacuate their folks. The French, the Germans, the Italians as well. So we are kind of late to the party. And that was one of the problems that we had been pointing out to the Biden administration leading into the G7 and NATO summits last week, that, hey, all of our allies are doing this. We promised that we would go in together and come out together, and leaving together means that we have to bring our allies with us as well.
Another question that just came in, what's the U.S.'s public opinion about the growth of the Afghan SIV program? And anyone who wants to answer that, yeah, Chris, please go ahead.
So there's not been a lot of polling done on this. I will say that the name is escaping me. More in Common is a polling group run by a West Point veteran named Dan Vallone, and I'm stalling here because I'm trying to think of the name of the actual report that they released a couple of months ago. But their polling suggests that 2/3 of Americans, broad swath of Americans, support an outright process to get these folks out of the country as quickly as possible. That this is a very popular program, and this is something that everybody can agree on. I mean, you look at Congress, for example. There's not much that Congress can get done, frankly. But you have hardcore Trump supporters and far left socialist Democrats all agreeing on this one issue, which is why it's frankly so disconcerting that we waited so long to try to get this issue fixed, because this enjoys broad bipartisan support. There's not many people that you could find on the Hill who are not going to come out and support this issue.
Thank you for that. And then this question's more for Matt. What do you see as what are Colorado's legislative priorities for next year, especially as they relate to immigrants and refugees?
I think it's too early to know now. I think as we come out of the COVID pandemic, we'll see that more need is probably going to arise from the immigrant refugee communities and really communities all over Colorado. But I hope we can build on the momentum and the work that we did this year and continue to find ways to uplift and grow and help the refugee community here in Colorado.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And just the last question for Chris, Sohalia, Mustafa, you know, as we walk away from this incredible discussion, if you could just say one thing you hope people take away from this and remember when they wake up tomorrow?
So I would say, don't forget the SIVs. They have lots of expectations, and let's just do something for them.
I'll let Sohalia go. That's all right.
Thank you. I want to say, please save lives, and they are innocent, and they are not a threat. They worked for development of their country and also helped US government to implement their project in Afghanistan for development. Either it was development projects or military, and they need help and support. Everybody who can support, please support them. They are waiting, and Taliban will kill them if they don't get out of Afghanistan as soon as possible.
And I'll just say that this is not over. Just because the Biden administration yesterday came out with their news, like I said, there's a lot of questions unanswered, and we need to make sure, we need to keep up the pace, to keep up the pressure, to make sure that every last one of the 18,000 Afghans that are waiting for their SIV visa, that they are evacuated and their families are evacuated, and they're evacuated to a place where they're not going to sit and languish for 10 years, like the Horn of Africa, for example. So this is not over. You need to call your member of Congress, speak to your local community groups who can also speak out, and demand that everybody is evacuated. If they can evacuate one person, they can certainly evacuate 18,000. And so I would just kind of end on that.
And then Matt, anything from you to add?
I'll just say I hope to see all of you next year at the legislature and all through the summer and through the process as we go through and identify what more we can do for communities.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing your personal stories. They're really powerful and impactful, and we're grateful for your insight, Chris, and just the perspective you're able to bring to this type of conversation. And I hope it was informative to everyone to help you really understand this issue. And with that, I will turn it over to Naday.
All right. Thank you so much, Victoria. And first of all, thank you, Chris, for moderating this panel. Thank you for providing an overview of the SIV program and also sharing with us what is currently happening under the Biden administration with the program. Thank you, Matt and Victoria, for providing a summary, first for your advocacy, and also for providing a summary of the 2021 legislative summary, and also sharing all these exciting policies our state legislators are pushing for. It's really amazing to see how proactive and great these policies are for refugee and immigrant communities. Also, I would like to thank Congressman Crow for his support and also for the work he's been doing under the SIV program. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you to all the attendees for taking your Friday afternoon to join us and learn more about the SIV program. My colleague, also, I would like to thank my team with Meg and Mary and Hannah for putting this event together and for helping with the logistics and IT. So my colleague Meg will be dropping in the chat a link for additional ways to learn more and to stay engaged. Also, if you could please do it right now, follow, like, and share Colorado Refugee Connect on Facebook to learn more about future conversations, in-person events, and also to just stay connected to integration work in Colorado, also nationwide and worldwide. Thank you all for being here and have a great rest of your afternoon.